we live in a time where, there's an endless barrage. Your average wellness interested person is inundated by an endless barrage of marketing for biohacking tools, gizmos, gadgets, and things like that. And my house, trust me, is loaded with them. Like I'm very much a consumer of these kinds of things. But I will say that the number one biohacking wellness tool that a person can have in their kitchen by a long shot is a digital food scale. Like the digital food scale is like the number one investment from like a technology standpoint. It sounds rudimentary, but from a technology standpoint, it's the number one investment that you can make in your health.
It's like $10 on Amazon, 10, 12 bucks.
It's super cheap. Yeah. I mean, mine was like $16.
And so just explain to people who have never used a digital food scale, what are you using this for in your day, right? When you're thinking, I don't know if you do meal prep or you're planning out your meals exactly, or how you cook at home, but walk them through how you're using a digital food scale and how that's tied into you dropping down to, you probably lost, how much fat total do you think you lost?
I probably lost like 15 to 20 pounds of pure fat.
Yeah.
And as you can see on there, I've actually increased my skeletal muscle.
Your skeletal muscle.
Yeah. Which is not the most, not necessarily the easiest thing to do for
tough.
most people.
Anybody who's tried to do it, it's tough.
Yeah, but it's actually pretty easy when you follow the cheat codes, when you keep your protein high and when you train intensely, when you keep your training up. It's actually, so this is what's called body recomposition. Yeah. So losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time. Many people think that that's an impossibility, but it's actually not an impossibility. And particularly for somebody who's naive to training, like you can very easily gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. And the leaner you get, it becomes more difficult, but provided you're keeping your protein intake up, it's still possible. It's still very much possible. It's not inevitable that you lose muscle, is the whole point, which is really important. Because again, nobody wants to come out of a diet looking just like a smaller, more gaunt version of themselves, right? They want to look more muscular, more able-bodied, right? Whether you're male or female.
Yeah. And
so the digital food scale, I think, is really important. For one, all the calorie counts of all foods, well, there's a few reasons. For one, the calorie counts of foods are determined by food weight. So volume can lie, right? But food weight typically doesn't. Like the volume of a food, I mean, we see this on you can see this on food packaging, right? Like the volume is, foods are measured and packages are filled in accordance to their weight, not necessarily their volume. Foods settle over time. So that's one. Two, just the mere act of observing the serving size that you're consuming and the number of servings that you're consuming is actually, there's a phenomena called the Hawthorne effect, where when a person is being observed, they tend to act more morally sound, right? Just because they feel like they're being observed. So that it automatically influences the way that we behave. So I've actually applied this effect to just observing the amount of food that we're eating, observing ourselves, essentially. When you observe that you're consuming 3 servings of a food, right? It's just it adds a little bit of friction, right? Like because you see the amount of calories per serving, and like, are you really intending on consuming 3 servings of a food? Like, is that really what you need right now? Or are you just pouring mindlessly, the rotini from the box? Because I mean, it's super easy to overconsume, and like, we have no sense of how much we're consuming when we're just pouring mindlessly. On the other hand, when you use a digital food scale that weighs on a gram to gram basis, it's just a lot easier to audit and thus become conscious of what it is that you're eating, which I think is just so important, bringing a little bit of like mindfulness to our food, right? And so, I think that's like a big boon to health, right? To make sure that we're not over consuming food, and to just put a little bit of attention on the foods that we're consuming.
This episode is brought to you by LifeForce. I've always been into learning about the latest longevity research, but ever since I turned 40 this year, I'm even more interested in learning how to apply it to my life so I can get the most benefit. That's why I was super excited when I found LifeForce, a revolutionary health platform that's changing the game when it comes to personalized performance and longevity-based action plans. Here's what sets LifeForce apart from other testing companies. For one, LifeForce's diagnostic plan accounts for 40 different biomarkers, including fasting insulin, ApoB, and organ health markers, giving you the big picture on your chronic disease risk and cardiometabolic health. Number 2, LifeForce makes working with a functional medicine practitioner easy. Their team connects you with top-notch doctors that put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and they also include recommended supplements and lifestyle changes for your unique biological needs. And 3, LifeForce makes tracking your progress more convenient than ever. They send a licensed phlebotomist to your door every 3 months, and they'll adjust your plan based on how your body changes. If you're serious about optimizing your longevity, you have to check out LifeForce. Right now, you can get 15% off your first LifeForce purchase. Just go to mylifeforce.com. That's my life, L-I-F-E, force, F-O-R-C-E.com, and enter the code DHRU, that's Drew, to optimize your health span today. Last year, I turned 40, and it's funny you mentioned olive oil. Like, I am such a huge olive oil fan, and like I go on olive oil tastings during my vacation. It's like a big part of, and I love going to Italy, and my wife had been a few times. So for my 40th birthday, I took my whole family to Italy, and we were at this villa, and we had set up this olive oil tasting. And you're generally there and you're eating a lot and other stuff, but I go ham on olive oil. Like, I go crazy. So then I came back and I said, all right, largely in part of like interviewing really great guests on this podcast, some of the people that have been on your show as well too, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and other individuals. I said, okay, I'm 40. I know that I'm under muscled. I grew up vegetarian. I wasn't really eating protein. I got to focus on that, and I got to start strength training. I kind of started to get into it, but I haven't been like working out since high school like you. So I was like, let me get serious about it. So I knew I needed support. I signed up with this group here in LA called Ultimate Performance.
Love it.
And they were the ones that really were like, okay, we're going to look at every single thing that you're eating. You're going to take a photo, and they made it simple through an app and everything. And initially, because I had some very strong goals, I needed to not only take photos of it, but I had to use a food scale for it. And I actually had to enter into the app. They have their own custom app, but there's plenty of apps that are out there that people can use. And I got a chance to see firsthand that I was having in one of my sort of big fat salads or whatever, I was having like a quarter of my total calories just from like olive oil and dressing alone. And when you are trying to, in my case, I was trying to drop fat because sure, it was right after the trip, but I came in, I didn't do in-body scan, but they did caliber testing, right? Multiple point body caliber testing. I came in at 26% body fat, right? Probably before that trip, I was probably more like 22, still out of my ideal zone of what a young, healthy male should be. So I started at 26% body fat. I started tracking things. I started following, we were kind of on a simpatico journey, but I didn't know your cheat codes at that time yet, but I was kind of following it with this group who was also respecting the fact that, hey, I don't like to eat a ton of carbs, because when I eat a ton of carbs, some of my markers on my LifeForce get out of whack. My fasting insulin, my glucose variability is all over the place. I can't focus as much. So I don't want to eat no carbs or low carbs. I just don't want to eat a ton of carbs. So they were willing to work with me on my journey. I want to have some questions for you on that. And just through regular strength training and cutting back on some of these things, following a lot of these cheat codes that you have here, keeping my protein high, by January, I'd gotten to 12.5% body fat.
Amazing.
We'll have to throw up a little before and after photo. I went from skinny fat to skinny lean, and now I'm just trying to add muscle mass, just add like 0.8 to a pound of lean muscle mass a month through strength training and things. And I think that was a big aha moment for me, similarly to some of the things you're talking about. I don't study nutrition. I'm not like writing about it like you. I'm definitely not the expert. I get just to ask great questions to people like you. But even I found myself in that position of the confused individual thinking, I'm eating I'm eating so healthy. I'm eating all these clean foods. I'm even watching all these glucose spikes and watching my continuous glucose monitor. My fasting insulin is in the optimal range. It's like a 2.53. And yet still I have all this belly fat around me. Right? I'm in the skinny fat category like a lot of Indians are. And I had to go through this own process myself to see, oh, wow, you cannot ignore the whole calories conversation. I think a lot of people are waking up and having that moment as well. How do you think, if you would think from the other side of things, right? Like you said, there was two groups. There's the extreme energy balance people that even say like, it doesn't even matter to have extra chemicals in your diet. Everything's a chemical, right?
Yeah.
That's one of your favorites. To this other group is like, look, whether it's extreme carnivore or fat people that just say, look, just eat whole foods and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
How did the whole foods, extreme fat people, if you would stress test their sort of framework, how they got there, not to lump them all together, but kind of have to for the sake of this question, what do you think led them to that conclusion that calories, didn't matter?
Yeah.
Not that they weren't important, which is what you're saying here. You're kind of somebody that I see that's in the middle, but they got to a place where they were like, hey, calories don't matter at all. You don't even need to really be tracking them or thinking about them.
Yeah. I mean, just because somebody doesn't count calories doesn't mean that calories don't count, right? A lot of people make the mistake of adopting these diets, whether it's the ketogenic diet or the carnivore diet or whatever. And it's just so dramatically different from their prior diet, which in often cases is the standard American diet, right? So somebody on the standard American obesogenic way of eating will they'll get caught up in one of these diet tribes on social media. Typically how it happens, whether it's the ketogenic diet or the carnivore diet or the vegan diet, and any diet generally, any dietary modification, any added attention that one puts on their diet is going to be better than the standard American diet. And so they'll start to see progress, right? They'll start to see an improvement, whether it's in their health or their body composition, especially when adopting a diet like the ketogenic diet, which is going to be higher in protein, higher in fat, a carnivore diet, which is typically going to be way higher in protein. Again, protein's the most satiating macronutrient. And so these are diets that are inherently more satiating than their standard American diet counterpart, right? Same with the vegan diet. The vegan diet, maybe they are more protein conscious if their on-ramp to it was like, a more reasonable, advocate for it. But even if not, I mean, the vegan diet tends to be higher in fiber, which is satiating, right? So generally people will adopt these somewhat more satiating diets and they'll lose body fat to a point, right? Until they start adding in the fat bombs, or they start, or their carnivore diet is composed primarily of really fatty meat, right? And then they see their weight loss stall. And that's typically what you'll see happen, right? People on, ketogenic diets, they're putting lots of butter in their coffee, perhaps, right? Which, don't get me wrong, I think, buttery coffee is delicious, but that's when people will start to see these like weight loss stalls and they're wondering like, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing right. And that's where it becomes clear that they're neglecting the fact that, or maybe they haven't been told that calories still matter regardless of what your dietary way of eating, what your preferred way of eating is, right? And so there's this fallacy that calories don't matter because it got them to a certain degree of progress. It led to a certain degree of progress. But if they neglect to acknowledge that calories do matter, then that oftentimes can serve as a pitfall where they stall. And that's where you really start to have to look at your diet and be like, okay, well, where can I remove? Maybe I can cut back on some of the fat calories. I thought it was really cool when Sean Baker, who's a well-known carnivore advocate for the carnivore diet, he's a fairly aggressive personality on social media, but I enjoy his content. He only eats meat, right? And he acknowledged recently that he aspires to get leaner, and to get leaner, what's he doing? He's cutting back on the fat calories because he already doesn't eat any carbohydrates. So to get leaner when you're on a carnivore diet, turns out calories do matter after all. You do have to reduce the fat calories. And you see this all the time with the carnivore diet, ketogenic diet, because if the carnivore diet and the ketogenic diet, if for whatever reason calories didn't matter on those dietary plans, then everybody on those diets would be shredded. And they're not. Like, I look at people all the time on social media. I go into people's accounts, and usually it's those that have their, carnivore diets, carnivore diet or ketogenic diet are in their bios.
Hashtag.
Yeah. It becomes like, that's suddenly their
identity,
tribe.
Yeah.
And they don't have great body compositions.
Right.
So we have to acknowledge that calories do matter, but they're not all that matter.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like one group is saying, hey, look, it doesn't matter that you save. It's all about how much money you make.
Yeah.
And the other group is like, no, it's about saving. And then it's actually like, if you're really trying to build wealth in your life, it turns out it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right. It's how much money you make. And it's also spending, because we've all read those stories of celebrities who made a shit ton of money and yet ended up bankrupt because they were spending a shit ton of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you just, like, for me, somebody who was starting out at 16% body fat and is well aware, for example, of the benefits of extra virgin olive oil. Like, I was consuming extra virgin olive oil liberally and I was healthy. And we know that extra virgin olive oil is the healthiest oil to consume. It's got an anti-inflammatory effect. Meta-analyses show, and it's a staple in the Mediterranean dietary pattern, which we know is associated with positive health outcomes and the like. So a perfectly healthy food, right? But 1 tablespoon of oil has as many calories as a large Honeycrisp apple. And when you're looking to economize in your diet and to reduce the calories so that you can drop some body fat, it's a lot more, I think, enticing to look at where you're ingesting all of these added fat calories so that you can continue to eat really satiating whole foods like a Honeycrisp apple, for example. I'm just using that as an example. And ultimately, it's only 500 calories a day that you need to cut and maintain on a consistent basis to lose a pound of fat a week, right? And so if you're ingesting 2 tablespoons of oil, which if you're eating out on a regular basis or if you're consuming, as I often recommend, a salad a day, and you're just liberally pouring the extra virgin olive oil in without auditing it, right? You could be ingesting hundreds potentially of calories of just pure fat that could be sabotaging your weight loss.
Yeah, even
right?
though it tastes great and you add a little bit of salt, it's just so easy to consume.
Yeah. Like, I go to a salad chain frequently. There's a salad chain, there's a few of them on the coasts. I don't, they're probably fairly ubiquitous at this point. And I would get my salads made with a custom dressing of extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar, right? And the person behind the counter, underpaid staff, asks you, would you like your oil light, medium, or heavy, right? They're not measuring it. They're just kind of willy-nilly squirting it in there, and you're essentially leaving your fat loss progress in their hands without properly auditing that fat. And the swing is likely massive, right? It makes a lot less of a difference with the balsamic vinegar, which has negligible calories, but with something like oil, which is the most calorie-dense food that exists, it can be a big barrier to somebody like losing, and it could also be a source of like unintentional fat gain, right? Because we talk all the time about how healthy extra virgin olive oil is for you, but even that needs to be I think it could be really helpful to audit, right? Like where these added fat calories are coming from.
It's so true. So when you were covering a few of those cheat codes ones, just to kind of summarize, you covered the first one on your list, which was eating home way more, right? And you talked a little bit about that. Do you typically, for yourself, obviously you don't have kids, you're single right now. Would you do meal prep? Would you do anything to sort of make that easier for you? Would you plan out your meals? Or do you feel like generally you kind of know, because even though you aren't a chef, you're pretty good in the kitchen, so you just make something as you need to?
Yeah. Well, meal prep is a fantastic option. I think one of the best things that people can do is to essentially have meals that they eat on a consistent basis. I think variety is great. It's really important to keep things interesting, and I love variety in the culinary sense. But it can be really helpful to, especially for somebody on a weight loss journey, to have 1, maybe even 2 meals a day that they can lean on, and they know that they basically have already audited and they just eat on a consistent basis. First of all, it reduces decision fatigue, right? So it reduces the amount of times in a day that you can quote unquote screw up, right? So to know that I'm eating a breakfast every morning of 3 whole eggs and what have I been eating? Well, I work out in the morning, so I've actually been, which is a very controversial food, but I've been enjoying the occasional gluten-free oats, like organic gluten-free oats pre-workout, which a lot of people think is not a health food, but it's a starch, and it actually provides the energy that I require when I have those morning workouts, right? 3 eggs, fruit, again, highly satiating, self-limiting, and I kind of generally know that that's going to be like a 500 calorie breakfast. I can vary it up, I can change it up, I can increase the protein, I can do 2 whole eggs with a bunch of egg whites added, and so I'm increasing the protein calories while keeping the fat calories static, and I'm still getting those highly nutrient dense egg yolks. But yeah, adding like egg whites to a scramble is a great low cost way to increase the amount of protein calories in your diet. And then for lunch, I think it's really great to just generally like opt for a grilled protein of some sort, like whether it's a beef tenderloin, grilled chicken breast, fish, things like that. Some kind of, non-starchy vegetable, always incredible. And then, because I'm working out on a consistent basis, I love those, those carbohydrates are really valuable to me. So again, not a no fat diet. I'm still getting plenty of fat in like whether it's fish or steak. But then I've been integrating like the occasional like rice or sweet potato.
Yeah.
And again, you go to look at any bodybuilder's diet and they're integrating these foods because it supplies your muscles with the glycogen that the next day you can go to the gym and burn off with your exercise.
YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
If you want to, as I mentioned, achieve a calorie deficit, you can go on any number of diets. They all work, provided you adhere to them. And unfortunately, on the other hand, most diets fail because people tend to adopt these extreme diets, right?